Welcome to Know Your Candidate podcast. This is an opportunity for candidates from across Tauranga City wards to tell their stories, their experiences, their reasonings in their own words. A format which gives them more than the public debates and profiles that you've seen already. An opportunity for the voter, the ratepayer, future resident to get to know who you want leading the city and, importantly, are they capable of doing so? Anne Pankhurst, a previous business owner, councillor and political junkie, will find out more why the candidates want to run, where they have come from, what they're going to do. So let's not wait anymore. Let's go.
We're with Andrea Webster from the Arataki ward. Welcome, Andrea, and welcome to Know Your Candidate podcast series.
Thank you, Anne.
Pleasure. Our format today is to take the opportunity for a longer, more conversational approach so you, the candidate, can speak and share your own aspirations for the city. We will take about 20 to 30 minutes answering prepared questions that you have no idea about, sadly, for you, maybe. But the most important aspect of this election is that you vote and you encourage everyone to vote. Democracy works when we all engage, actively take part, learn about our candidates, understand what is important to us for the future of the city. So remember to share this podcast with all of your channels and all of your databases, and to follow us through Know Your Candidate series on thepodhub.com. So, Andrea, tell us a bit about you. Tell us about, who you are, children, no children, what you've done in the past. Give us that brief bio on yourself.
Hi. Kia ora koutou, ko Mauau te maunga, ko Tauranga te moana, ko ngai tūkairangi me Ngāti Hi oku hapu, ko ngā tirangi oku iwi. No matapi tōku kāinga I nai nei, ko Andrea Webster hau. So all of that means I'm born and bred here in Tauranga. I've grown up, I was born in Arataki and grown up in Matapihi and Maunga Tapu, where my hapu are based. Ngāi Tirangi is one of the three iwi in Tauranga, so that's who I affiliate to. And I'm currently living back in my homestead in Matapihi. I'm 52. I've got a blended family with 7 children. I'm responsible for having 4 of those 7, but I certainly have raised all of them. So with that blended family, I have grandchildren. So we have 4 grandchildren. Sadly, none of them living in Tauranga at the moment, but all of our cities are not too far away to get to, spend time with whānau. Started my schooling here in Matapihi Primary. It was an English medium school at the time. Moved into Mount Intermediate, which was, for me, the first experience of, I guess life outside of my bubble in Matapihi. And it was really the first experience of being separated from the people I've known for my lifetime. But it was good experiences because that meant I got to know lots more people and have a whole lot more experiences, in my growing up around Arataki in the Mount. I went to Mount College. I spent all of my time there just, building, I guess, my vision of my life. My life in my home place was always very, how would I say it? Well, I actually don't know how I'd say that, but my dad was disabled for all of my life. He became disabled when I was 2 years old, but he was actually disabled through illness. So it's sort of the framing of my life. And then probably in my late teens, in my last years of high school, my mum became very unwell. So she developed, developed epilepsy as an adult, which was something that we had to learn about. And it's not something that happens often. But it certainly threw in another mix into my world, with both of my parents having quite challenging conditions. And both of my parents, I lost them early. But that, I guess, is hopefully giving you a sense of the sort of person I am. I ended up developing an abundance of empathy for people in particular, for people suffering with illness, dealing with disability. One of the pictures I would like to share in my mind is that, I'm Maori. I was growing up in a Maori family in the 70s and 80s, and into the 90s who, were struggling with all sorts of life matters. Being Maori, our perspective on life is probably different. But it meant that I had proudly fierce Maori parents who were very certain that they weren't going to expose any of those difficulties to the world. So we lived a very insular life for a long time until my parents could both come to terms with who they were and how they were and the life that is. But through all of that, yeah, I have emerged. I have two sisters, one older, one younger, one much younger actually. So that could have been another contributing factor to my mum's, onset, because she had a lot of big stresses.
So, Andrea, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I have to say that Matapihi is like paradise. I absolutely adore that peninsula. So, we're now just one question before we quickly move on. You had an opportunity to also stand in the Māori ward. So, why did you pick the Arataki ward over the Māori ward?
Well, for me, it was really quite clear that our Māori ward candidate is a guaranteed opportunity to have someone at the council table. But we need more opportunities. And so for me, it was just recognising that and wishing to grow the opportunities for Māori to participate in decision making.
Excellent answer. So, just a question now that I wanted to expand. I'll just go through some questions. Have you had any previous governance experience? And if so, roughly what is the size and scale of the budgets that you've worked with?
I do have previous and current experience in governance. I began in school. So Mount College is my key school governance board that I have influenced and been a part of. That school's 17, nearly 1,800 students, and the budget applied to schools is based on the number of students. We certainly don't have a council level budget, but we have, I'd say at any given time, we're managing to $10 million worth of assets and income. And,
Great.
so that's my active participation on that school board. From there, I am a member of the Plenty Tourism Board. It does have a substantial budget, but again, it's in that regard, I think the budget is probably similar to Mount College, to be honest. In the tens of millions, not more than that. The Play Centre Aotearoa board is a significant board, currently going through a significant change. I've been brought on as part of the management of that change. That board can manage upwards of $20 million because we operate a private training establishment as part of the offerings of Play Centre. And then the Disabilities Resource Trust is a board that is based in Whakatane, and we certainly are looking at, we manage a number of different government contracts, including ACC, and the inclusion of the ACC contract certainly does boost the budget that we're required to fiscally be responsible for. And that budget could be, upwards in the $20 million range. So aside from those governance roles, I've participated and continue to participate on many land trusts with varying budgets, none of them to the extent of the council, but all of them provide absolute experience and training in all of the aspects of governance.
So, what would you consider the main role of the mayor and the councillors to be?
Yeah, my view of the mayor and council role is exactly that of a board, and that is to consider all of our duties and obligations alongside all of the wishes and aspirations of our community, and find a way to meet the duty as well as uphold those aspirational values and views of the community.
Right. So, the skills that I'd like to drill down on is the ability and experience in managing complex commercial and political environments. Are you having fun there with your?
Oh yeah, I've knocked it over. Sorry, Anne.
That's all right. We are you okay? You
Yes, I am.
so I'll repeat the question. It's just wondering what ability and experience that you bring to managing complex commercial and political environments.
Well, I'm going to suggest that every board I sit on is a complex set of commercial and political environment. When I focus on my experience in the school or education sector, because my experience in that sector goes beyond participating on my local school board. So to the extent that for the last 4 years or more, I've been what's called a regional governance and employment advisor for the New Zealand School Trustees Association in my day job. And that required me to support, facilitate, advise, and ensure the safety and low risk of all schools that I was required to support. And those are schools across the whole country. And the nature of issues within schools can be very complex. And the complexities are often because they involve the community. So I have a lot of experience working with different communities that I don't live in or have an involvement in, and helping them to work through all of the challenges that have occurred to bring their conflicts or their issues through to the board. So those can be, from as simple as employment matters to the extent of disasters happening on education outside the classroom event, and everything in between. Like the COVID response was a massive piece of work that I was certainly right in the middle of, and ensuring that all of our schools were kept at the lowest risk while ensuring that they were upholding the requirements of legislation and navigating people's understanding of what those are, and their obligations and their duties, as well as their just personal views. So that certainly, I think, is an experience that I would draw on hugely. Yeah.
So another question, and one that is a pretty big issue. If funding for the huge infrastructure spend is one of the biggest issues that's facing the city, do you have any other solutions other than ratepayer revenue?
Yeah, I've considered this, and I hope to have other solutions. I've looked at the PPP situation where you can have partnerships, and that resonates with me because being Māori, we're always seeking partnership, and I understand the value of partnerships. But at the same time, there's certainly some, the same considerations in those partnerships, and the impact on the ratepayer still exists. So while PPP could be certainly a part of a solution, I think it's really around also adding some education to that piece so that our community understands that while there could be a partnership to alleviate some of the initial expense and cost of, a particular infrastructure need, there has to be an understanding of how that may still transfer back into the ratepayers' coffers. And yeah. So
Right.
while I don't have any absolute solutions, I'm certainly looking into the solutions that are available through the Local Government Act and all of the the examples that are set by other councils. I'm looking into those to see how those have worked or not. But the most important piece of information I'd like to share there is that I think we need to look broader, because the ratepayer has shouldered all of the burden, and yeah, we've got to be smarter about that.
Okay, so given that you govern at large, but you represent or champion your ward, how do you see the collective action when it's not what you think your ratepayers or some of your ratepayers might want or are thrilled about? How do you manage that conflict?
Look, I think what's important is to give information and inform, and to actually bring the community along that journey, and keep them informed around, the progression of a matter, or it's all about understanding why. So if we get to a result that doesn't uphold, the views or aspirations of the ward, I think the key piece is understanding why we've got to the result, and helping the ward or our community to see, I guess the positive in the result, regardless of whether it is the aspiration of the ward.
So, and I'm also interested in your reaction to the view that Tauranga is a critical part of New Zealand Inc. and that we have to think more nationally than locally sometimes because of what happens here matters.
Well, I'm glad what happens here matters to the nation. But I would have to agree that certainly every part of New Zealand is critical, in my view, to the new NZing. But in saying that, I'm well aware that we host the biggest port. We've got lots of different sort of opportunities for tourism, so we certainly have some special characters that I understand would be important to the greater nation. So I'm really happy to be accountable to more than just our own community, and take a positive and active step to ensuring, that we do our part for NZ Inc. as well.
And another question, how do you think you're going to manage the competing interests like reasonable rates, new funding models, infrastructure deficit and debt? How will you choose between investing in growth and versus rate relief, where there's a lot of angst?
Yeah. Well, growth is something that is going to, so that's a given in my view. One way or another, our region will continue to grow. And I would hope for a measured, more responsive approach to the increase in rate, which does consider the current status of people's lives. But at the same time, so I think what's important there is that I listen to the constituents in the ward, and I get a very good sense of across the board where people are actually at. But at the same time is that I provide as much information and guidance around the decisions that are required to be made, in particular around the rate level, but making sure that it's appropriate, and that it's most appropriate to achieve what we need. So it's, from my point of view, really important that we get the education on those matters really clear, and front put every decision with enough information for people to digest and understand, okay, this is what we all are looking for. So we need a vision for the city or for the ward, from the ward. How are we going to achieve it? And that we step through that together with the community, knowing that we're not going to please everyone, it's certainly been clear that whatever the decisions that are made can be justified and make sense.
So I'm just going to pick up on one of the governance roles that you have, which is the Bay of Plenty Tourism, which obviously makes you very knowledgeable about how tourism is tracking in Tauranga or the Bay of Plenty. How is tourism tracking in this region? Do you think it's becoming more and more a tourism place to be? Obviously, we have a lot of internal tourists. I'm talking much more about the external and not necessarily the cruise ships, because that's kind of, in my opinion, sits in a bubble on its own. It's the wider international tourists that are actually the, if you like, the money spenders.
Yeah, well, I know that there definitely is a drive to increase the offering to the international, the broader tourism market. I know regenerative tourism has been on our agenda a lot, and I think it fits nicely here in Tauranga with our environment and our growing understanding and appreciation of the need to have sustainability at the forefront of what we do. I do think we can do, I hope we can do better in terms of promoting our city, our region to the world. But I think we need to actually work out what our identity is to the world. And yes, we've got beautiful environment, beautiful beaches, but I'd like to think we're more than that. And I suspect that as our community matures in its relationship with each other, we might be able to showcase that more and, be less inhibited by, I guess, relationships that aren't as strong as they could be.
So I'm going to ask you a really hard question now.
Yeah.
In 10 words that an 8-year-old can understand, which means me, can you give me a quick 10-word synopsis of what you consider the identity of Tauranga City to be?
I diverse. We are a diverse community with,
Oodles of personality.
yeah. Well, I do want to focus on the diversity because certainly not something that I feel we celebrate enough. Yeah, and I suspect that we're not viewed as a diverse community to people outside of our community, but I actually think there's some real gems there in terms of who we are, our identity. So it's an identity that I like to, uphold, but it's certainly not an identity that, as a community, I think we're not there yet, but I certainly want to help progress towards that so that once we're all working together, we'll be able to achieve far more.
Well, Andrea, thank you very much for that. It was great to talk with you, and I wish you luck for the future. Remember to encourage voting and to share this link through your networks and to follow us on thepodhub.com. And again, best of luck. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Anne.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tune in to the next episode of Know Your Candidate to be informed on who you want to run your city. Got feedback and like to comment your thoughts on the episode? Connect with Know Your Candidate on social. This has been the podhub.com experience. Check out thepodhub.com for other podcasts and how you can even do your own.